Hello, hope you're doing well. My name is Navjit K. Sohal, and today we're going to talk about how to serve alcohol smartly on board the aircraft. So, there are 5 questions that I will answer today and hope that it helps you out in the coming future. So, first question is, what are the rules and regulations airline crew should follow on board the aircraft when it comes to serving alcohol to passengers? So, first is to follow the traffic light system. This is a system used to identify whether a passenger is still eligible enough to consume alcohol or not. So if a green signal would mean that the person or the passenger has little or less or no alcohol consumption at all, which means he or she we as the flight crew can still serve that passenger the alcohol that they're requesting for or that they're demanding for. For yellow light, it means that the person might have like one or two drinks and is starting to show signs of intoxication, which could help us determine whether or not the person should get more alcohol served or not. And that's actually a way to like warn ourselves that we should limit the serving of alcohol towards this passenger. And then after that, red light would mean stop, or it would mean that we should not give or we should not serve more alcohol to this passenger because he or she is already intoxicated enough or had enough, let's say, alcohol level in his blood already due to the symptoms he might show, like let's say very inappropriate behavior or losing some senses and many more symptoms that we can use to identify whether that person has enough alcohol or not. And then second rule is never serve alcohol to anyone under the age of 19. Because again, this isn't legal. Like the legal age to drink is usually 21 around anywhere in the world. However, in order to make sure that the certain passenger is not under 21 or 19, we can also ask for their IDs just to confirm if they're in the legal age or if they're eligible enough to be served alcohol too. Because again, some people might lie about their age just to get the taste or just to get the requested drinks, which is alcohol or beer or wine or whatever that may contain alcohol, which could be inappropriate according to their age. So it is better to like make sure or to confirm their age first before serving them alcohol, and that would be through asking for their IDs like holograms or Ontario cards or PR cards or anything or any identity card that you can use in order to identify whether a person is above 19 or below 19. And third rule is slowing service down when necessary. So there are tendency on board the aircraft when like the passenger usually has, let's say, might have a low level of toleration towards alcohol. So even if he or she might have like one or two drinks only and is starting to feel intoxicated or acting very intoxicated or very, let's say, abruptly, I think the way to handle such passengers is through slowing service. Like let's say if this passenger is asking for more, then what we can do is actually slow service by like serving him food or like giving him non-alcoholic beverage drinks, or just only giving him something when he or she giving him or her when he or she's requesting for something at the end of the day. So do not just inappropriately serve this customer every time he asks for. We should also be able to identify or to determine of how much and what should be served this customer, knowing that he or she might have been intoxicated enough with the little or with the minimal consumption that he or she might have had on board the aircraft. So second question is, why do you think that there has been an increase in unruly behavior on board the aircraft? So the thing is that we live in a generation that tends to escape from reality through hooking themselves into intoxicating products such as liquor, drugs, cigarettes, and many more. And we also live in a very saddening environment nowadays. Like let's say people are stressed about their work, about their studies, about life in general, which then people tend to drink more to actually escape from reality at some point, right? Which then causes them to lose their sanity and act abruptly. And the reason why we see much of these occurrences on board the aircraft nowadays is because of the lack of fear on air, and even the passenger crew privilege playing a role in doing so. So what do we mean by the lack of fear? As we all know, there is no such thing as security guards on board the aircraft when there's a flight. Like it's just the flight attendants trying to handle the situation all by themselves. which means that passengers tend to think that that because these flight attendants are, let's say, ladies or women, they won't be able to handle much of the behavior, or they won't be able to, like, they're not something that they should usually fear from, because again, they're just mere ladies or waitresses serving them the things that they're asking for, which means that the lack of fear is very evident in onboard the aircraft, like during flight, because again, they think that these flight attendants can't do anything against them, and that's what makes them makes them have this opportunity, or feel like they can do anything they want without having to face any consequences. And that's like one of the costs. The second is that the passenger crew privilege. So this means that, whenever in the hospitality industry or in the customer service field, usually the customer is considered as a god, or as or who has the upper hand in like between the employee and the customer. So usually people, or let's say customers or passengers, usually play this card of them being the customer, like saying that, oh, I'm your customer, it is your right to serve me and to make me happier, to satisfy my needs. So that type of privilege is actually taken advantage of on board the aircraft too, when it comes to, like, if, let's say, if a flight attendant comes and tell these people to not act that way, or to, like, that they cannot serve them more alcohol or any of the products that might be problematic, they tend to play this card saying that I'm the customer, otherwise I'm gonna fire you or sue you or complain about you if you don't do this for me. I think that's one of the reasons, like, those are the two reasons why such incidents occur on board the aircraft. And that's a very, let's say, crucial thing to consider, knowing that it's a matter of safety of not only the flight attendant or the crew, but even the entire load of passengers at the end of the day. So, what are the possible risks when passengers are overserved on board the aircraft? So the number one risk is always abrupt behavior, or like very inappropriate behavior that people tend to do, because they lose their senses, they lose their sanity, and they don't have the fear of having to face any sort of consequences. So the risk there is that it could either harm the crew, like they could physically harm the crew while, getting their needs done, or they could also create a scene during the flight, which could also impact the reputation of the airline, as to how people could just go live on board the aircraft nowadays and just post it on social media as to what's happening, what's not happening, and all that stuff. So the fingers are then raised towards the airline itself, and that could risk their, let's say, credibility, because of how these passengers tend to act very unruly. And that's something that we should consider when it comes to handling overserved passengers on board the aircraft. So it could either attack the crew, it could either attack the airline itself, or it could also cause any harm to the surrounding passengers when it comes to giving them a very unpleasant experience with the travel that they're going for. So one incident, fourth question is, what incident, like, let's talk about an incident that might have occurred regarding, or in connection with alcohol consumption by a passenger. So one incident that occurred regarding excessive alcohol consumption on board the aircraft was on Southwest Airlines flight, when the passenger allegedly drank their own alcohol during the flight and continued to do so after a flight attendant told the passenger that was prohibited. The passenger later on even sexually assaulted the flight attendant and entered the lavatory and smoked marijuana. However, he was then fined $40,823, according to USA Today. So that's the source, USA Today. I got this incident report from there, wherein, like, there was this customer who brought his own alcohol on board the aircraft and drank it, and still probably requested for more, in terms of service, and got so drunk that he was acting very unruly, very inappropriately, that to the extent that he even sexually assaulted a flight attendant and smoked marijuana in the lavatory. So by seeing all this, by like taking a look at this incident, we could tell as to how people really do not have this fear on air, and that's something that we should really take into consideration, which is why I'm gonna answer the fifth question, which is, what can airlines do in order to prevent such occurrences or incidents? So the only answer I could give for this one is that impose security measures on board the aircraft. It could be done through hiring a security guard specifically assigned just for flights. Like there could be, like, you know how there are some, like there are people like flight marshals on board the aircraft, but that's very rare. Like there are only some flights wherein flight marshals could be seen or could be present, and people or the passengers may still not know about them, that they're, they're on board the aircraft, or that they're like having an observation about what's happening or what's not. So what we should do is actually make it exclusive, to actually hire a very exclusive security personnel on board the aircraft during the flight that everyone should know about, and that he or she would be responsible enough to handle such situations wherein, wherein like things might get out of hands. Because the reason why flight attendants are okay, even if they're doing their job at the very utmost ability, the thing is that they still cannot do much of it, because they're just mere flight attendants who might have the rights to make these passengers face the consequences. However, they still do not have this utmost extent or this type of, let's say, eligibility to handle such matters in their own hands. So what we need now is actually a security personnel, or like a let's say, yeah, a personnel or an officer on board the aircraft that can be eligible enough to handle such situations in a very, let's say, in a very bold manner, without having to fear what will be the consequences later on. Like just to impose fear within the passengers, that if ever they do act unruly, there will be consequences they will have to face afterwards, like just there, and not that they have to wait for the flight to land in order for them to have to face the consequences that they're supposed to face, knowing that they have done something very inappropriate on board the aircraft. Let's say breaching the sanity of the airlines, and even the pleasant experience that the passengers are expecting to have from the airlines and from the crew, and even questioning the credibility of the crew members at the end of the day. So all those things being said, I really hope this will be helpful for the coming, let's say, incidents when it comes to alcohol consumption. And I think security, or like imposing security, is one way to go in order to decrease or to prevent such incidents, and to actually promote safety, not only for the crew, but even for the passengers and even for the airline. So thank you for listening, and have a good day.